Welcome to my channel Karma Romance Stories. Please like, subscribe for more videos.
The music stopped for only a second when my husband's hand struck my face. 400 employees had just watched their CEO slap his own wife in the middle of his company gala. His secretary was standing beside him with a smile on her face. She had just called me a pathetic wife and told everyone that I was lucky to be married to a man like him. My husband expected me to cry. He expected me to apologize. He expected me to walk out of that ballroom with my dignity destroyed. Instead, I slowly wiped the tears from my face, looked directly at him, and sent one message: "Dad, it is time." 10 minutes later, the ballroom doors opened. Every executive in the room stood up. My husband suddenly stopped smiling. His secretary turned pale. And for the first time that night, everyone discovered the truth about who really controlled the company. My name is Claire Morgan, and for 12 years I believed I had married the man I loved. His name was Daniel Morgan. To the outside world, Daniel was everything a successful husband should be. He was confident, intelligent, ambitious, and respected. He had built a technology company from a small office with 6 employees into a corporation with hundreds of workers and offices in several cities. People admired him. They called him a visionary. They called him a self-made businessman. At business dinners, people shook his hand and congratulated him on his success. What they did not know was that I had been there before anyone knew his name. When Daniel started his company, he had almost nothing. I was the one who encouraged him when his first investor rejected him. I helped him prepare presentations late at night. I reviewed contracts. I worked alongside him while he built the company. But Daniel never mentioned those things. At first, I did not care. I loved him. I believed marriage meant supporting each other without keeping score. Then everything changed. Daniel hired a new executive assistant named Vanessa. She was young, confident, beautiful, and extremely ambitious. From the beginning, I noticed the way she looked at my husband. It was not the way an employee looked at her boss.
It was personal. I told myself I was imagining it. Daniel always defended her. Vanessa is talented. Vanessa understands the business. Vanessa works harder than everyone else. Slowly, Vanessa became part of everything. She attended meetings. She traveled with Daniel. She appeared beside him at company dinners. Eventually, she started making decisions that should have been made by senior executives. When I asked Daniel about it, he became irritated. "You do not understand corporate life, Claire." That sentence hurt more than I admitted, because I had spent years understanding him. I understood his dreams. I understood his fears. I understood the company before it became successful. But apparently, I no longer understood him. Then came the annual company gala. It was the biggest event of the year. 400 employees and executives were gathered in an enormous ballroom. There were cameras everywhere. Executives were giving speeches. Employees were celebrating promotions. Daniel stood on the stage, accepting applause. The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice. I felt proud. Even after everything that had happened, I still felt proud. Then Vanessa walked toward our table. She was wearing an expensive dress and carrying a glass of champagne. She stopped beside Daniel and placed her hand on his shoulder. Daniel did not move away. Instead, he smiled. Vanessa looked at me and said something I will never forget. "You should probably go home." I looked at her. "Excuse me." She laughed. "This is a business event, Claire. You look completely out of place here." Daniel said nothing. I looked at my husband. "Daniel, tell her to stop." Vanessa smiled. "Why should he? Everyone knows you are only here because you are his wife." Then she leaned closer. "Honestly, you should be grateful. Without Daniel, you would be nothing." The people around us became quiet. I could feel everyone watching. I stood up. Vanessa, step away from my husband. She laughed loudly. Look at you acting like you own him. I told her again, step away. Then Vanessa wrapped her arm around Daniel. She looked at me and said, "You are a pathetic wife." The words echoed through the table. I looked at Daniel. I expected him to defend me. I expected him to tell Vanessa that she had crossed a line. Instead, he looked at me with cold eyes. "Claire, stop embarrassing yourself." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not because Vanessa insulted me, because my husband had chosen her, in front of everyone. I took one step toward Vanessa. I did not touch her. I simply said, "Remove your arm from my husband." Daniel suddenly stood. His face was filled with anger. "You have caused enough trouble tonight." I stared at him. "What did I do?" "You're making a scene." I laughed quietly because I could not believe what I was hearing. "She insulted me in front of your employees, and you are blaming me." Daniel stepped closer. Then his hand moved. The slap came so quickly that I barely understood what happened. The room went silent. My cheek burned. Someone gasped. Someone dropped a glass. Vanessa stood beside Daniel with a satisfied expression. Daniel looked at me as though I had embarrassed him. "Leave." That single word changed everything. I slowly touched my cheek. Then I looked around the ballroom. 400 people were watching me. Some looked shocked. Some looked afraid. Some looked away. Daniel thought I was defeated. Vanessa thought she had won. But neither of them knew what I had already decided. I took out my phone. My hands were shaking. Not because I was afraid, because I finally understood that my marriage was over. I opened a private message thread. There was only one person I needed to contact. My father. I typed 3 words. "Dad, it is time." I pressed send. Then I put my phone away. Daniel looked at me. "What are you doing?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "Nothing." He laughed. "Good, then leave." I turned toward the ballroom entrance, but before I could take another step, I heard a strange sound. The doors opened. 2 senior executives entered. Behind them were several members of the company board, and behind them was my father. Daniel froze. Vanessa stopped smiling. My father was not an ordinary guest. He was the original financial backer of the company. Years earlier, when Daniel had been struggling to raise money, my father had provided the capital that allowed the company to survive. But there was something Daniel never knew. My father had never simply invested money. He had retained controlling rights through a private holding company, the same holding company that had protected the company during its earliest years. And I was the legal beneficiary. My father walked straight toward me. He looked at my cheek. His expression changed immediately. "Who did this?" Nobody answered. I looked at Daniel. "He did." My father turned toward Daniel. "You struck my daughter." Daniel suddenly looked nervous. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding." My father interrupted him. "The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice." I saw enough. Vanessa stepped forward. "Mr. Morgan, Claire has been causing problems for months." My father looked at her. "Who are you?" She hesitated. "I am Daniel's executive assistant." My father nodded. "Then you should know something about corporate authorities. You are an employee. You do not have the authority to humiliate a shareholder's representative at a corporate event." Vanessa looked confused. Daniel suddenly stepped between them. "This is my company." My father smiled. "No, Daniel, it is not." The room became completely silent. My father turned toward the board. "Show him the documents." One of the executives opened a folder. Daniel looked at the papers. His face changed. The company had been built on a structure Daniel had forgotten about. The original investment agreement had included voting rights. Those rights were still active, and after years of growth, the value of those shares had become enormous. My father had never interfered because he trusted Daniel. He had believed Daniel would protect his family. He had been wrong. The board chair stepped forward. Daniel, effective immediately, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Daniel stared at him. You cannot do this. The board chair answered calmly. We can. Daniel looked at me. Claire, tell them this is unnecessary. I said nothing. He stepped closer. Claire, please. I had waited 12 years to hear that word. Please. But it was too late. I looked at him and said, you should have said that before you raised your hand. Vanessa began crying. Daniel turned toward her. This is your fault. She looked shocked. My fault. You told me she had no influence. Daniel said nothing. The executives around us heard every word. Then the board chair announced that an independent investigation would begin immediately. The gala ended that night. But my story did not end there. Over the following weeks, the investigation uncovered things I never knew. Money had been transferred to accounts connected to Vanessa. Company travel expenses had been manipulated. Several contracts had been approved without proper authorization. Daniel had also been planning to remove me from certain family assets connected to the company. He thought I knew nothing. But he had made one mistake. He underestimated the woman he had spent 12 years ignoring. I did not fight him with screaming. I did not fight him with revenge. I fought him with documents. Every agreement, every investment, every legal record, every piece of evidence was reviewed. Eventually, Daniel had to step down permanently. Vanessa lost her position. The company survived. And the employees who had laughed that night never laughed again. Several of them contacted me privately. One employee told me something I will never forget. She said she had watched Daniel disrespect people for years, but nobody felt brave enough to challenge him. That night changed everything. Not because I destroyed Daniel, because everyone finally saw him clearly. Months later, the company held another employee meeting. This time I stood on the stage. 400 employees were sitting in front of me, the same room where I had once been humiliated. I looked across the audience. Then I said, a company can survive a bad quarter. It can survive losing money. It can survive losing a powerful executive. But it cannot survive a culture where people believe power gives them permission to hurt others. The room became silent. I continued, respect is not something you demand because of your position. Respect is something you earn through your behavior. That night, I did not talk about Daniel. I did not talk about Vanessa. I talked about the future. The company eventually became stronger. The board introduced new policies. Employees were given safer ways to report misconduct. Executives were held accountable. And I finally understood something. I had spent years believing my value came from being Daniel's wife. It never did. My value existed long before I married him, and it remained after I left him. 1 year after the gala, I returned to the same ballroom. This time, there was no humiliation, no screaming, no insults, no fear. The employees stood when I entered. I looked at the empty chair where Daniel had once sat. For a moment, I remembered the slap. Then I remembered the message I sent. Dad, it is time. And I smiled, because sometimes the most powerful response is not revenge. Sometimes it is simply refusing to stay where you are being disrespected. That night, my husband thought he had slapped away my dignity. He was wrong. He only woke up the woman who had spent years standing quietly behind him. The woman he called useless was connected to the people who had helped build his company. The wife he called embarrassing became the person who helped protect hundreds of employees. And the woman he thought would leave the ballroom crying walked out knowing that her life was finally beginning. If someone ever makes you feel small so they can feel powerful, remember this. You do not need to destroy them. You need to stop giving them access to you. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is not watching someone lose everything. It is watching yourself become stronger after they tried to convince you that you were nothing. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling us what you would have done if you were in her place.